Everyone, I'm Chair Dan Wolk. I'll call this September 17th meeting of the Woodland Davis Clean Water Agency Board of Directors meeting to order. I'll just note for purposes of roll call that the entire board is present, at least Vice Chair Bill Marble and Directors Jim Hilliard and Brett Lee. I think we're going to expect Sid at some point maybe, but I think we should get started. So the approval of the agenda, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Wow. I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. Public comment. Now's the time for any member of the public to speak to public comment. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Agency business. First, consent items A through D. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion on that.
Move consent.
Second.
So moved, seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed. Motion passes 4-0. Item number 2, Davis Woodland Water Supply Project update. Dennis.
So the progress on the project continues to go very well. I want to just give you a brief overview of kind of where we are in the construction activities. And then toward the end of the presentation, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about our need for a temporary pumping station at the joint intake. Recall last time at the last board meeting, we talked about the fact that the regional water treatment plant is going to be finished sooner than the joint intake. So we've had some time over the last couple months to study some of the alternatives, and we have a recommendation that we'd like to present to the board. So starting off with our financing, we're into a very routine pattern now with the submittal monthly of disbursement requests to the state board. Woodland's loan of $111 million, we've received about $45.7 million, or 41% of the loan to date. And similarly for Davis, on their $95.5 million loan, we've received about $46 million, or 37% of the loan. We're caught up in terms of all of the past requests, and now we're into a pattern where each month we're submitting the next increment for payment. Financing joint intake grants, reminder that we're attempting to secure $40.2 million total, 20.1 from each of the federal and state. A bit of good news, we've been notified through RD 2035 that the full $20.1 million in federal money will be available this October. They've gone through all of the process and received the authorization to receive that money. The state, we've received 12, and just this week we submitted two Proposition 1 applications for the balance of $8.1 million. We submitted an application to the California Department of Fish and Wildlife for $8.1 million, and then a second application for $2 million to the Delta Conservancy. The hope is that one or both will allow us to receive the full 8.1 balance. And then just a reminder, in the diversion agreement that the agency has with Reclamation District 2035, looks like the federal and state grants received to date will be fully expended in November. And there's a provision in that agreement that requires the agency to provide a bridge loan for payments until the state money is received. And we have included $2.6 million in the budget that you approved in June. And that should carry us at least through the end of the year. So we're hoping that we will hear good news on our grant applications before the end of the year. Fish and Wildlife has indicated that's their plan. And then we will update the board in January in terms of whether that 2.6 is sufficient or whether we have additional bridge funding to provide. The list of utility coordination and property acquisition is getting shorter. The property acquisition is done. We finally acquired the Lillard property, the last one that we've been talking about for several board meetings. And we continue to coordinate with PG&E on the permanent power for the treatment plant, and we have some remaining off-site power drops that we need to get in place as well. Spend a minute on the joint intake project. The construction by the contractor, Ball Forbade, is continuing. The walls are nearly complete, and they're starting to place the top deck on the intake structure. This week, they began installation of the pipelines across County Road 117. They have removed the cofferdam around their outlet structure, and they still have the ability to work extended hours, but they seem to be catching up, so they're as we understand it, they're not working Saturdays, and they're still doing some double shifts. This is just a couple pictures of the intake facility. You can see they're working on the top deck here. This is at the southern end. This is sort of in the middle where they're starting to form the top deck. And then this is the northern end where you can see they're working on finishing the wall pours. And you can see the significant amount of steel that's going into this structure. I think it's going to be very secure when it's completed. In terms of the treatment plant, the structural concrete work is complete. So what we're seeing at the job site now is the shift toward the installation of mechanical and electrical equipment. You're starting to see a number of the metal buildings at the maintenance, the ozone, and the implant pump station starting to go up. They've started degrading for the sludge drying beds east of the plant, and they're starting the installation of the electrical cabling and wiring. The operations building is advancing nicely, and they're working on the interior, installing sheetrock, HVAC, and the electrical. So through the end of May, actually this should say through the end of August, which is the first sub-bullet. We're 72% complete, and total billing of $105 million out of the roughly $144 million total contract with CH2M Hill. There's just a few photos of the site. You can see the buildings starting to come up out of the ground. The two tanks finished for some time now at the very southern end of the site. You see the operations building with the roof on, and a number of the other structures advancing. As I said, we're getting into the mode now of installing mechanical equipment. This is the mixers going in at the sand ballasted clarifiers, some of the under drains being installed in the filters, storage tanks for chemicals at the chemical building, gravity thickeners. They're installing the mechanisms for those that unit process. All of the switchgear and control panels have arrived on site, so they're being stored and protected until they actually get installed in the various buildings. Maintenance facility, the metal building is going up. This is the initial stages of the metal building at the ozone facility, and earthwork on the solids drying beds. In terms of off-site pipeline construction, last time we met, we were still in the middle of the closure of County Road 22. That work was done and was completed on time, reopened on July 15th as scheduled. The Woodland finished water pipelines are complete, and Davis's pipelines will be complete this week. They're finishing up work along County Road 103 and south of the Willow Slough bypass. So we continue to coordinate with the neighbors in Yolo County, and we're looking at paving of County Road 103 in September, October. So we've been sending out weekly updates of the off-site pipeline report. I think we're pretty much past the point where we're having detours and input from the public. So the thought would be when we get closer to the paving, when we have a definitive paving schedule, we'll send out an update on the paving on a regular basis to the board. But in terms of the off-site pipeline work, that's essentially complete at this point. This is a photo of the Davis finished water pipeline adjacent to County Road 102. So since this was taken, they've been in the process of backfilling and re-leveling that alignment. So in terms of what's coming up in the next few months, continue the application process on the grants and loans, continue our coordination with Yolo County on the road closure and particularly the paving, and then PG&E to get the permanent power on-site into the off-site facilities. Permitting, we are continuing to work on the permit to operate. That's the most important permit that we need to receive. That's the permit from the health department that says you can run the plant and deliver treated water to customers. So that's a very quick rundown on the progress of the overall project itself. As I mentioned, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the coordination with the joint intake facility. So the first bullet here is our current schedule. CH2M Hill's schedule shows them having the regional treatment plant operational on June 16th of next year. And Balfour Beatty, RD 2035's contractor, shows them having the joint intake facility operational June 28th. And as I'll show you in a minute, there's some additional testing that CH2M Hill has to do to make sure that when Balfour Beatty says the project's ready, before CH2M Hill accepts it, because they're going to be operating it, they need to put it through their paces as well. So the service contract with CH2M Hill requires the agency to provide raw water for the treatment plant startup and testing. And the first addendum to the joint intake and diversion agreement that we signed with RD 2035 has a provision that allows the agency to build temporary water facilities and take water essentially through the existing intake until the new intake is completed. So this is the aerial photo. This is the existing intake here. This is where the joint intake is being constructed. Right now, the water is diverted through this existing intake structure, and it's put into the main canal right here. The plan for the temporary pumping location is to put some temporary rental diesel-powered pumps, a gang of perhaps 6 or 8 pumps, in this general location here, pump out of the Conaway Canal, and then pump into the raw water pipeline and deliver water to the treatment plant. So this is a very busy schedule here, but this shows what Balfour Beatty, the RD 2035's contractor's plan and schedule is, and what our contractor CH2M Hill's schedule is. So Balfour Beatty is going to begin testing the joint intake facilities around May 7th, and then they'll begin their performance test on May the 9th. CH2M Hill is going to begin the testing of the treatment plant on the 12th, and in order to do that acceptance test, that pre-acceptance test, they need to have the raw water delivered from the Sacramento River, the joint intake, the temporary pumps. The CH2M Hill is going to complete their test on June 16th. And once they complete the test, then they'll start delivering water to the two cities. And they'll need those pumps until June 20th. So there's an overlap period here where we need to have the temporary pumps available no later than May 12th, and we need to have them at least through June 20th, or approximately 6 weeks, assuming everybody sticks with their schedule that's about 9 months out right now. So we looked at 4 alternatives to how to best accomplish the temporary pumping. Maybe start with the first one here, which is actually the no temporary pumping alternative. And this alternative would just say, let's delay the startup and testing of the treatment plant until the joint intake is completed. So that would obviously delay deliveries of the treated surface water to the cities and UC Davis until late July, again, assuming that the schedule for the completion of the intake remains as it currently is shown. It would require changes, and fairly significant changes, to our service contract. the way the service contract's worded, we're holding 10% back from CH2M Hill until the project's accepted. So once the project's accepted, we owe them $14 million, 10% of the contract price. And at that point in time, the annual O&M contract kicks in, which is $4 million per year. So they're in the process now. They're hiring staff. They're outfitting all of their facilities. They're going to be fully prepared to start operating the plant and delivering water in that June timeframe. So, I mean, I want to caution, this is very, very preliminary, but without having sat down and talked to CH2M Hill about it, it looks like the cost to delay, at least until late July, would be around $1.25 million. So this is an alternative that we looked at, and as I'll show you in a minute, we're not recommending. Second alternative is to build a temporary pumping plant that has the full capacity of 30 MGD. So that would be in sync with the service contract requirements. It would allow for full delivery of treated surface waters to the cities as scheduled. It would provide more capacity than we probably need given the current demands and the current drought situation. It has a cost of $1 million in capital. That's the rental of the pumps, and about $500,000 a month in operating costs. That's primarily diesel fuel. Large portion of that is diesel fuel and some manpower to run the pumps. The other two alternatives is build a temporary pumping plant at less than 30 MGD. Consider like a 15 MGD pumping plant. The problem with that is that it would delay the acceptance test, the 30-day acceptance test. And CH2M Hill has a number of senior staff, experienced staff that they've scheduled in to be there when they run the 30-day test for 2 weeks. If we delay it, we're going to have to pay them to come to reconstruct that at some later time, and they're going to have to bring personnel and equipment, et cetera, back for a later 30 MGD test. Cost shown here. The fourth alternative, and the one that we're recommending, is to build a temporary 30 MGD plant that would allow for the acceptance test is currently required in the service contract, but then to back off and run the plant at less than 30 MGD. We're using an example of 15 MGD here. So this is the cost of the four alternatives that I just described. As you can see here, with the exception of the 15 MGD alternative, they're fairly close in cost. The reason that the 15 MGD alternative is more expensive is because we would have to bring back the personnel and redo the test, the acceptance test at 30 MGD at some later date. So these are very preliminary order of magnitude estimates, but it looks like around $1 million for the alternative that we're recommending, a 30 MGD plant, test it at 30 MGD as currently planned and required in the contract, and then back it off to something less than 30 MGD to meet the demands in the two cities. We do have $2 million in the approved budget that you approved in June for this temporary pumping plant work. Just kind of to help keep things in perspective, the other part of this is, we don't know what next winter's going to bring. We're hoping it's going to be wet. We're going to have lots of water. But we're trying to balance, if the drought continues and we're in the startup mode in the spring and then we're delivering water in the summer, what are the demands likely to be? So you can see here, before the drought, the summer demands combined in the two cities were about 30 MGD. Actually 40 MGD, I'm sorry. Now the demand in this most recent period is about 23 and a half MGD. So that shows you that the demand is significantly depressed, and this is a part of the reason that we're thinking that when we get past the acceptance test, we will be able to back off of the delivery to somewhere around 15 MGD. And if we build it for 30 MGD, we'll be able to make a better determination of what rate we want to operate it, the temporary pumping plant at once we get closer to that actual startup and delivery. This is a temporary pumping schedule, so we've got CH2M Hill doing a design for this temporary facility, and most importantly, they're getting cost estimates from the pump suppliers. So, you know, this is, we'll have much better and definitive information in October. Assuming that the board is comfortable with the plan, they'll submit a change order for us to review in late October. And because of the cost of that change order, it will require board action and consideration, and that would be at our November board meeting. And then you can see here we would be in a position with this schedule to begin use of the temporary pumps in May, and that would allow CH2M Hill to stay on their current schedule for completing the project and starting deliveries. Before we go there, any questions on the temporary pumping plant and where we're recommending we go?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions, Dennis. First of all, the operational, the reason that the costs of temporary pumping are below the $1,250,000 is the very short period of time of operational costs. My question is, if, for example, we had monsoon rains this winter and there were some delays that have not been expected or experienced previously, and that period of time had to be increased even, say, a month, then we're suddenly quite a bit over the $1,250,000 that simply delaying the startup would have meant, according to your numbers. So the question I have is, if we were to choose the option to delay the startup, does that $1,250,000 number change if there is a prolongation by another month? Does it also get altered?
Yeah, very good question. As I mentioned, we haven't sat down and discussed in detail with CH2M Hill, so you know, if the board wanted us to go in that direction, we'd have to have those conversations. But I think the answer to your question is yes, because they will start the $4 million per year service when the treatment plant is ready to go. They're expecting to start that $4 million per year operating cost. The longer that's delayed, I think their position would be the more, you know, they're entitled to. I think you also run into the problem of they've hired the staff, or they will have hired all of their staff, and so I'm fairly confident that, you know, they would request the staff be paid, and we would have to negotiate back from there in terms of what other things might not be required from them, but they're going to be fully staffed and ready to go. And the big question really is the $14 million. There's some discussion that we can have there in terms of how long we hold on to that full retention amount. But I'm sure that, you know, their focus is on completing the plant, getting it accepted, and getting that payment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is that all, Bill? On your end?
Yeah.
Brett, do you have any questions? Welcome, Sid, by the way. Yeah.
No, I don't. Thanks.
Just a further on your point, Dr. Marble. I mean, one of the things that we're trying to balance, and it's a little tough to, you know, get precise when we're 9-10 months away. We don't know what the winter will bring, and we don't know whether both contractors will stay on their current schedule. But, you know, if for example, the CH stays on their schedule, and we don't have any reason to believe that they won't, and the joint intake were to be delayed, then that 6-week gap could become 2 months, and then the question is, you know, how long do we wait before we, you know, serve the new surface water to the customers? So there's that unknown in terms of how long we might actually need the pumps. On the one hand, it may cost a little bit more money, but on the other hand, if we're prepared for it, we won't suffer a delay in terms of when we start the deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question, Dennis, about the bridge loan.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense to me, and I understand that it was included in the budget, but and maybe you said this last time, but what happens if are you feeling confident that we'll get those grants, or let's assume we don't get those grants? I mean, what are the options at that point? Are we going to have to?
Well,
sort of cross that bridge when we get to it?
I think, yes, but I think that the chances are very good. There's no guarantees we're going to get, grants, but I think the chances are good. We're feeling confident that we'll get at least a portion of that 8.1 between those two applications that we've submitted. We'll continue to pursue grant funding until we exhaust all of our possibilities. So if we don't get it, all in this recent set of applications, we'll keep working on it. The ultimate fallback, I think, is that whatever's not grant funded would be eligible for SRF funding.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Any more questions?
What would sway you towards delaying the project as opposed to the temporary pumping? I mean, I'm sure this has been discussed among engineers and staff.
If we knew that it was, that the time between when they needed the water and when the joint intake would be done, I mean, I think we would want to think hard about it. But what is of concern to us is the unknown in terms of if the schedules widen. I'm concerned, I think the staff is concerned, that when, Balfour Beatty has to complete the project, they have to get it ready and say, we've tested all of the agency's equipment and facilities and we think it works. And then CH2ML has to go in there and they have to check all of the mechanical equipment, all the instrumentation, all the electrical equipment. They have to do their own assessment. And whenever you have, my experience, when you have the two contractors and the handoff, there's always the possibility that there's going to be delays or issues that come up that are going to take time to resolve.
Is staff unanimous on the recommendation of the temporary pumps?
I would have to say that we did a lot of discussion and a lot of what ifs, and we felt very comfortable with the recommendation that we felt that was the way that we ought to go.
And the City of Davis concurs with
Okay.
those comments, yes.
May I ask a question? Presumably, if Balfour Beatty falls too far behind, there would be some financial penalties, or no?
Yes, well, I should back up.
So, I mean,
Let me jump in here. Both the current schedules that I showed you, both Balfour Beatty and CH2M Hill are finishing earlier than their
Right.
contractually required date, and Balfour Beatty's contractual date is October 2016.
Because I think that might address Bill's concern.
Yeah, that's
if
very
the
good.
distance spread too far at some point, then they would owe some money, which would help subsidize the cost of this approach.
But since they're planning to finish earlier than that, if they were to take longer than they currently call for in their schedule, there wouldn't be a penalty until they go past October.
Right.
Yeah.
But at October, what are the magnitudes of the penalties? So I guess Bill's worried about if they fall too far behind.
Offhand, we don't have that. We could look that up.
It's
and
probably
provide
unlikely
that
that they would. That might be just something just to
Yeah.
know eventually.
We'll take a look at that and see if there's anything that's different than what would be in a normal construction contract.
Well, based upon your description, it doesn't sound like they would fall that far behind. So
That's where I think it's actually another reason that a delay would not be, from Balfour Beatty's standpoint, a delay off their current schedule would not hurt them financially. So they have less incentive to aggressively maintain their current schedule.
Jim, you?
Yeah, I think we're dancing around an item, just to make sure that I understand, that if we were to change the schedule of the treatment facility and add a month to it to get it closer to the completion date, I mean, what does that do? I mean, because that's where
So I think
CH2M Hill is.
These are great questions. This is exactly what we've been trying to wrestle with at the staff level. So I think two things. One is we would have to pay CH2M Hill something because they'd want their $14 million retention. and they'd want the operations component to kick in, and they would have staff, that they'd be fully staffed by that point, or nearly fully staffed. Then the second thing is, if we delay it a month, and then Balfour Beatty falls behind,
We're in the same boat.
at that point, we haven't made provisions for temporary pumping, and, you know, we have no ability to, we just have to wait until they finish at that point.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else?
Just a couple of quick final slides. This is the, you know, backing off. This is the big picture schedule milestones. You can see we're hoping to get permanent power this month. Commissioning is actually going to begin in January. What that means is they're going to start putting the different pieces of equipment through their paces. The plant will be substantially complete in April, and then the acceptance test will start in June. And as we just talked about, the final completion of the joint intake, the contract requirement is October of 2016. And then finally, this is the project cost table that you've seen many times before. It has not changed. We have added UC Davis's share of the overall total capital cost to the table, but we are still at $204.5 million for the regional facilities, and then the local facilities, Davis, UC Davis, and Woodland, an additional $75 million, bringing the total to $279 million. And that is it. If there's any further questions.
Seeing none. Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it. That brings us to our third item. Consider adoption of resolution certifying the final supplemental EIR for the proposed Davis Woodland Water Supply Aquifer Storage and Recovery Project.
Just very briefly, this builds on the environmental documentation that was completed in 2007. This is specific to aquifer storage and recovery. So this is the environmental documentation that allows either of the two cities to proceed with aquifer storage and recovery projects. The EIR is project specific for Woodland because Woodland has, you know, plans to develop ASR wells at specific sites. It is programmatic with respect to Davis. So what that means is that if Davis in the future decides that they want to do an ASR project, they can tier off of this, but they would likely have to do additional environmental documentation relative to the sites where you're putting ASR wells in place. And then one final point, you know, the anticipation, the plan is for ASR wells to be completed by the two cities. So while the agency prepared and managed the preparation of this EIR, the cities, if you proceed with ASR projects, will have to certify or take action under CEQA as a responsible agency for your ASR well projects in the future.
Any questions on this item? I'll entertain a motion on it.
Need a hearing of some kind? Does this require any kind of?
It's not a hearing requirement, but you should, with every agenda item, just pause and see if there's any public comments.
Oh, yeah. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this item in the public? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And I'll entertain a motion to approve the item.
I'll move that we approve the
Second.
item number 3.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion passes unanimously. That brings us to item 4. Consider approving agency policies relating to the State Department of Drinking Water permit application.
I'll address these items, Mr. Chairman. Items 4A and B relate to the pending Department of Drinking Water permit to operate that Mr. Deemer referenced in his project status update report. As he mentioned, it's a significant permit application and things are proceeding well. And as part of that permit application review, the department's asked for lots of information and documents from the agency, 2 of which they asked for were a reserve fund policy, which we don't have. And the second one they wanted was our training program, and we're going to address both of those. First of all, the training program, because the agency is not going to staff up to operate the water treatment plant, we don't have that kind of training program. All the staff you have, they're contract staff. You don't have any employees. But in looking at it, staff thought nevertheless it would be a good idea, it'd be a good prudent business practice to require your key senior staff, specifically general manager, secretary, and treasurer, to go through the same kind of AB 1234 ethics training that council members and supervisors go through. It's optional. It's not required by state law, but state law provides that if a governing board wishes, it can direct staff to go through the same level of training. We think this would be a prudent thing to do, so staff recommends the board adopt this direction that would require the general manager, secretary, and treasurer to receive that training, and that's stated in the recommended motion in the agenda materials. So I don't know, I pause with 4A and see if you want to deliberate and consider that matter.
Any questions on that? Anyone for public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? None opposed. Passes 4-0. 4B.
And 4B relates to the proposed reserve fund policy that staff has prepared, and it's in your packet. And there are proposed two reserve funds. One's really a fund, one's part of the service contract. With the last budget update the board prepared for the 15-16 budget, you did authorize a $10 million reserve fund as a budget action item, and the first part of this reserve fund policy would establish the policy language behind that $10 million reserve fund and what it can be used for and who's authorized to withdraw the money and its purposes. So that's consistent with the last budget action, and it provides that with each subsequent year, at budget time, the agency board will revisit that reserve fund. And that's a true contingency reserve fund that could be used for a wide variety of unanticipated, unbudgeted expenses. The second item, again, because the agency is not going to be operating the treatment plant and other project facilities for at least the first 15 years, the service contract incorporates this concept that's called the repair and replacement account, and it requires the agency annually to fund, first year's payment is $362,000. Through the 15-year operations period, you're going to annually fund this repair and replacement account that the agency will control, and that money is going to be available for CH2M Hill to requisition from for qualified major repair and replacement funds, significantly items that are over $25,000, and that items are going to be paid for not by CH2M Hill staff, but are going to be paid to third parties. So CH2M Hill is able to plan and have that money available, and that is a type of reserve, if you will, that's folded into the service contract. So then that's the second part of this policy. It just memorializes and summarizes the existing repair and replacement account provisions from the service contract. So I think this would be a helpful policy to adopt and send over to the Department of Drinking Water if approved, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions? Any public comment? I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
Move the item?
Second.
So moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 4-0. That brings us to item 5, which is consider adoption of resolution establishing water allocation policy.
And I'll cover this item as well. This is another policy we've been working on. This one is not directly related to the Department of Drinking Water application, but it's timely as the agency approaches the operations phase period, and as we have the worrisome prospect of perhaps a fifth year of a drought. And the agency staff has prepared this policy in coordination with West Yost and the cities, and the primary purpose of it, the service contract contains, important but general contract principles about the allocation of water between the three project participants, and it really focuses on daily limits between the three cities and percentages. But what it really doesn't get down into a lot of detail about in an operations level, especially during a drought, when blocks of acre feet are available for the cities and UC Davis to use and allocate, it really doesn't address their ability to try to schedule that water and how it gets scheduled. And the purpose of this policy is to memorialize and confirm that the cities and UCD have the flexibility to essentially schedule that water during drought years and move it around during the summer months as they may want to do and as permitted with the Bureau of Reclamation settlement contract. So this policy would allow that allocation of water. It would confirm an annual process for scheduling deliveries and for the agency to review and consider that. And that dovetails nicely with the Bureau of Reclamation contract that the agency is going to have to provide a schedule to the Bureau on an annual basis. So it's some important operational details in this policy that we recommend the board approve significantly. It's not intended to change anything in the service contract, and we've got a provision in there to confirm that it doesn't, and if there's conflicts, the contract governs. So it's not intended to change anybody's contract rights, but rather to put forth more operational details that'll give agency staff, CH2M Hill staff, in coordinating with the cities how to schedule delivery of water, particularly in water-short summers. Any questions?
Any questions? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve this item.
Actually, I had a question. I had a question for our UC Davis representative, just to confirm that he's fine with the proposed allocation.
Yeah, we reviewed it. Dennis sent it to it. I looked at it. David Phillips on our facility staff looked at it and thought it was fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Brett. I'll entertain a motion to approve the item. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Brings us to item 6, which is the long-range board calendar.
Yes, so you have a copy of the long-range calendar out through next May. One thing I note is that, and we didn't put on the calendar and we should have, is in the November meeting, the approval of the temporary pumping plant change order. So it looks like the October meeting is fairly light, and we may, as we get closer to it, want to cancel that meeting. It looks like we will need a November meeting for the approval of the temporary pumping plant change order, and then December is also looking light. We'd be back in January with a mid-year budget update for the board, and that's kind of what we see in the next 3 to 4 months.
Any questions?
Yeah, I may not be able to be here on November the 19th due to a League of Cities Board of Directors meeting. So just keep us appraised of that, and then we'll work out an alternate to be here.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? All right, great. So we'll move on to item 7, which is correspondence.
Yeah, so we got a number of support letters in support of our Prop 1 applications, so we've included them in the packet here. I think it was great that we got letters from our congressional delegation back in Washington, from our state assembly member and senator, and then a very long list of regional supporters as well. So we're hopeful that will be a very positive aspect of our application and its review.
Thanks. Any questions on this? Seeing none, that takes us to item 8, which is the Technical Advisory Committee comments.
Yeah, in the city of Davis, I'd like to report how our local pipelines are going as far as getting ready for construction. So we hired Gelati Construction, and they've been so far just doing potholing. We haven't constructed any pipeline as of yet, but it's pretty imminent now. And so Stacy Winton, who is our public outreach coordinator, has been working with us at the meetings. And we've been putting together some information that'll go out in the newspaper, and then also a website for the city where it will show where construction is occurring, what time, and what impacts to the traffic. So those are being completed. Timing as far as construction in the street area is about a month out now, about 4 weeks or so till there'll be some impacts to pipeline construction in the street. But we will see pipeline being strung out, getting ready for that process, possibly even as soon as next week up along Pole Line Road at the north end of the city. And then also at the very southwest corner of the cannery development, the city has a well site there, well 34. They're going to be working from well 34 back towards the east on that cannery development pretty soon also. In fact, they're starting to stage some materials there. So we'll have more public information coming out in the next week or two along the way as we prepare for actual pipeline construction in the street. So that's pretty imminent.
Thanks, Dan.
City of Woodland, our west transmission pipeline is essentially finished. We're doing a lot of the finished detail work now. We have finished the core drilling for the ASR well on well 11. We'll be moving over to well 4 in a couple of weeks and start there. As far as I know, we've received no complaints from our neighbors during the well drilling. At that point, they had a very effective sound barrier put up there. We're hoping for the same effect in well 4, so that's moving forward. We're very excited to get this ASR wells in the ground and ready and waiting for the river waterway when it gets here. Other than that, we're moving forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions from? Seeing none, board member.
I have.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Brett.
So board member comment.
Board member comments. Yeah, go for it.
So this is a question for Dennis. I know that people have talked about Davis potentially moving into a aquifer storage and retrieval system that would be downstream from the water treatment plant. Are there preferred distances or locations in terms, or preferred distances? And have we started, or are we aware of suitable sites in Davis that might be have potential for that?
My understanding is that, it's a viable concept for the city of Davis, but from the agency perspective, we haven't been involved in the planning, and perhaps Diane, you may want to add to that.
When we looked at it prior to doing the programmatic EIR, we did have to come up with possible areas in town. So what we did is we looked at some of our well sites that we think that we no longer want to use because they're lower quality as we switch to the better quality deeper aquifer wells. And so right now we've just put in there certain sites that were those particular wells. But I think we would want to do a little more study before we said that those were for sure the exact sites that were appropriate, because we're learning from Woodland's experience as they put their wells online. So there would be a wealth of information available to us that would help us confirm where the best locations were when we go for future.
Well, I'd just be, sometime in the future, perhaps after the completion, it might be nice just to get an update, just to better understand if Davis wanted to move in that direction, what it might involve.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Brett. Any other comments? Great. So seeing no objection, or unless there's an objection, I'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. So we are adjourned.